Trump trial looks like closing arguments are set for Tuesday, so let's break it down. Legal analyst Dr. Tracy Pearson up late with me tonight, live on the Final Five to talk about what to expect. Here we are, Tracy. We could get a verdict this week. I'm curious, as you've seen everything play out here, if you have the tea leaves in front of you, where does this go?
Oh, Jim, I value our relationship and my relationship with the network, but most importantly, I value your viewers, and I'm not going to lie to them. I have no crystal ball. What I can tell you, though, is that I think the prosecution put on a strong case, and I think the defense case was weak. They lost a witness that they had intended to call, which was an expert, somebody they wanted to call from the Federal Election Commission, a prior Federal Election Commission official, to explain the law, which isn't allowed. That would ultimately be doing the job of the jury, which is to interpret the law. And so the judge didn't allow that. And they didn't have very good witnesses. You really want to end with a bang. And that didn't happen.
Did the Michael Cohen testimony, which seemed to be, he was the quote-unquote star witness for the prosecution here. Revelations came out, things that he had admitted to, stealing from the Trump organization through the years. Maybe someday looking at a congressional run, selling T-shirts. You know, that got in the craw of the defense there. How was that received from the legal community?
I think that the prosecution did a good job at deflating any sort of momentum that the defense could create. I think the biggest mistake that we've all seen is that they spent 3 days cross-examining him, and that just isn't something you do. You get up, you make your points, you get in quick, you get out. And when you go on that long, what happens is the jury starts to see that person in a sympathetic way and starts to feel like you are the bad guy as the lawyer. So that, I don't think, was going to help them.
We were just talking about the idea that he didn't testify, and I think a lot of people we talked to didn't believe he was going to. He talks, we know Donald Trump has always talked a good game, but when it comes to putting up or shutting up, he decided, his defense decided to shut up. I'm sure when he said he wanted to testify early on, his defense was sort of like, you know, we're good. We got this from here.
Ultimately, it is the defendant's decision to testify, and in my experience, there's nothing that I can do as a lawyer to stop them. If I think they're going to lie, there are things that I have to do as an attorney. But in this situation, I think he probably listened to his lawyers. I don't think he would have done a good job. But at the end of the day, he was the only person that could undercut all of those witnesses, and he chose not to.
You know, what I appreciated about Todd Blanche in this case was, unlike other Trump lawyers, he did not get up. He was not the one giving testimony, or rather giving interviews afterward. He sort of let his client do that. Blanche just did the work in the courtroom. But as you know, Tracy, we have 12 jurors in that room and a couple of alternates along the way, and all it takes is just one of them. Even if you have in blue New York people who believe they have the evidence to convict, it just takes one out there. And it is a jury. It's a jury of his peers. But in New York, there's been a lot made about the political makeup. Does that factor into what we see happening when they take that vote?
I think that it can when you're picking a jury, but ultimately at the end of the day, what happens is that jury has sat through the entire trial, has seen all the evidence, will have all the evidence before them, has heard all of the testimony. And while they're not allowed to form opinions right now, they ultimately, human brains do that. And so they're going to go back, they're going to talk about it, and they're going to apply the law to the facts. And one of the things that struck me was that the first witness out of the gate talked about a catch and kill scheme. And that's got to resonate with a jury, no matter who they are.
We're just about out of time, but as you look at the other trials, other cases against him, which we're going to get to down the road, a lot of people have said this might have been the weakest one. Do you believe that, or was there some strength involved in maybe where this resolution goes?
I think this was a strong case because it was a documents case. And the state of New York took their time in making sure that they had a strong case. And so I think that this was a good choice to go first. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, of course, I would expect somebody who spent so much time in Syracuse to know about New York state law, because it doesn't matter what part of New York it is. The Empire State is the Empire State. Tracy Pearson, good to see you again. Have a great holiday, and we will certainly be talking to you in the next couple of weeks here.
Thanks, Jim.
And the Final Five is back after this.